Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go. So I want to begin this recording by acknowledging that last week I talked about the volatility of the weekend after a processing week with that waxing moon cycle from the eclipse that happened in February, and how super important it was to aim and focus as to what it is you want to manifest, bring into a reality, and make happen in any way you can. And of course, this weekend kicked off yet another war in Iran with the United States. So not to give a forecast of what may happen with that, but to discuss how the people, the powers that be, made a decision to take that strategic energy of the building eclipse. And this week we have its mate, its partner, which happens on the 3rd Tuesday, depending on where you are on the planet. In this case, Eastern time zone, 6:38 a.m. is the exact time of the eclipse on the 3rd of March. When we're in an eclipse season, we are in heightened energy of really wanting to pay attention to what is presented to us, what we feel an impulse to do, any epiphanies, revelations. And eclipses are not ideal times to act impulsively. And I'm not saying that the decision to bomb in the Mideast was impulsive, but one might say it feels so based on the perspective of how many people in a governmental body were really consulted and brought in. The energy of the eclipse, to slip away from politics, world events, which is really hard to do nowadays, but the energy of an eclipse is asking us, as we're going towards that full moon lunar eclipse, which we are on the threshold of, is how do we bring in balance, especially in relationship, especially in the case because it's the full moon, of course, but the full moon always, the sun is lighting up the moon. In this case, it's Pisces Sun is lighting up the Virgo Moon. So the integration that we're looking for, especially in relationship, and relationship is, it could be the person you live with, your animal friend, your family member, the person you work with, your boss, the guy who runs the deli. Relationship is getting a sense of how do I serve best within the relationship. And when I say serve best, what I'm talking about is that Sun in Pisces is lighting up the impulse, the tendency, the reaction of how can I help? And for some of us, that's a more natural instinct than others. There certainly are people on the planet who don't bother themselves at all with wanting to help or be of service. But this is an opportunity time to get triggered and have something reveal how they might choose to do that. Whether they do or not is always up to the ability to make a choice, free will. Some people, of course, have more free will than others. As I look at Monday, the moon is in the sign of Leo in the early hours of the day. That last aspect is the tension aspect that I forecast for the weekend because the moon is in opposition to Mars, and that's at exactly 7:27 a.m. Eastern time. So for early risers or people who are out and about at that point in the day, just know that there's a lot of volatility. Also, that moon is in a square aspect. It's separating from the planet Uranus. So that's a charged energy of impulsiveness, especially if it's connected with anger, aggression, desire. And it's okay to have a spontaneous thought or to feel inspired by something. What is really important to look at in a red alert capacity is if that inspiration or trigger causes action without thinking through. And as I said, some people, even if they thought through, would not be spending a lot of time or energy really worried or concerned about how what they wanted or did would affect another person because they want what they want. And so it's important to be aware to people who are operating without kindness or an awareness of other people, or who are just shooting off their mouth or energy that is volatile, because the ideal is to capture the fire, the sense of this is a momentum, and then work with it in a way that's constructive. So some of us may wake up from a dream, feel very jazzed about something, or angry about something, or motivated to do something. And the ideal is to let it simmer so that we're able to work it more effectively. And here's how we can and why it's available to us. Mars is changing sign on this morning. It goes into Pisces at 9:16, actually, Eastern time. And once Mars moves from Aquarius to Pisces, it's in what I call more a soft hammer mode. In Aquarius, it can be very strident, very sense of righteousness, a lot of verbal acumen, which can be compelling or disengaging depending on how it's delivered. In Pisces, there's a almost a relentless, slow drip continuation of this is what I want, and this is what I want, and I will not stop speaking about it or working it until you finally succumb to the persuasion or the unrelenting drip of my continuous, incessant desire. It's softer usually, but that doesn't mean it's not consistent. And it can resonate. It can power up from a place that has more of a echo than whatever was transmitted when Mars was in Aquarius. The other thing that's happening, of course, is with Mars in Pisces once the moon enters Virgo at 9:31 a.m. on Monday the 2nd. We are gaining momentum towards that lunar eclipse full moon that happens on Tuesday. Overall, I see this as a powerful eclipse for making headway in relationship in some capacity when we call up the spiritual well of intention, ideally loving intention, and channel it into effective service. Think of it this way. Pisces is the big vision, the big goal. It can be very abstract in a way. It wants to love, it wants to heal, it has a vision, and yet the moon in Virgo is precise. It's asking, okay, I get that that's what you want to do, but how do we make it happen? Let's make a list. Let's do an agenda. Let's figure out a strategy for how we can deliver the message, the intention of that spiritual mandate. And that's the ideal if it's spiritual. Pisces can also feel like a wound. It can feel like the victim wants a resolution or a payment almost for the call of the grievance, whatever it may be. Eclipses run in cycles. So for those of us who can think back to 207, that was the time when this particular eclipse series was pretty much in the same degree in line as it is today. Doesn't mean the same thing is going to happen. But once again, if you know where Pisces and Virgo fall in your horoscope, you can look at it and get an idea of how this actually might be playing in your life. And the houses they have to do with different areas of life. It's on the internet now. It's pretty easy to research the 12 houses, what their meaning is. Good resources for just study is astro.com. There's also one called Cafe Astrology, which is a really good resource too for timing. And just at astro.com, you can get your free horoscope wheel. So you can start to get a sense of how the moon is moving through your horoscope. And that'll help you really understand when things are particularly charged or on for you. Because as the moon travels through our horoscope, it shows us the areas of life that we're more emotionally invested in based on where the moon is traveling, yes, but also what our natal moon is, because when that's working with the travel of the moon, we usually have more of an energetic emotional focus on what the outcome is in different areas of life. So this lunar eclipse indicates that on Tuesday, it can be a very active day for things happening and getting done. I mean, one of the positives I'm looking at is Monday and Tuesday into the early morning on Wednesday look like times when there can be some coming together, like unexpected allies or a sense of an out of the blue resolution for whatever may be popping up and going on. So I'm not going to forecast an easy end to a war that was just started, but the alliances that can formulate from this kind of activity, pro and con, can come together and really gel with a direction of how people are reacting to basically an aggressive movement. And instead of a sidelines kind of reaction, there does seem to be a strengthening of direction, advocacy, alliances that will start to form and ideally strengthen, if I think in positive terms of outcome, over the beginning of the week. On Wednesday, the 4th, the moon goes void of course as of 9:53 a.m. And when the moon's void of course, it's not making another geometric aspect to another planet before it moves into the next sign. It moves into the sign of Libra at 1:56 p.m. So pretty much late morning into early afternoon is a time when it really benefits us to work in a way that is therapeutic and organized for getting things to a place that we have a sense of order. This is because the moon in Virgo is void of course. That period of time, regardless of sign, is good for finishing things already in motion, not starting something new, and kind of clearing the decks for when the moon goes into the next sign. In Virgo post eclipse, it's very much about kind of seeing where the, what's the phrase, seeing where the dust falls. Like after the sweep up and activity, it's like, okay, how does the room look now? Because it's very difficult to just totally eradicate everything. You want to see what else needs to be done to get things in order or to finish up tasks before we enter fully into the waning moon cycle, which of course starts as soon as we pass that full moon. But the waning moon cycle over the next couple of days, well, especially on Wednesday, mid-afternoon through Thursday, we've got that moon in Virgo, and there's most likely a lot of options that percolate. So I would imagine that over the course of Wednesday afternoon to evening into Thursday early evening, there is a lot of options that come through, not just specifically about world events, but also in whatever's going on in your personal life. It may well be several courses to look at to see which direction do I want to go? How do I want to move forward? The late afternoon on Wednesday may seem as though one isn't quite sure how to proceed. And that could be because, yes, perhaps there's options offered, but it may also be because there's not enough information. Remember, this week, Mercury is retrograde. It went retrograde late last week. So we're in this period where we basically are reevaluating, assessing, getting things in place, perhaps moving on from things that aren't working anymore, especially anything contractual or that didn't quite come together in the way we intended. And so these couple of days can really show where the misinformation is, or what we need to understand more dimensionally. And I see the most fraught period for this is basically late afternoon into early evening on Wednesday. Some of us may find that people we thought were going to be supportive or who we could rely on or structures we thought were in place aren't really coming together in the way we would like. Those of us who kind of go in there, roll up our sleeves and look at, okay, how can I restructure this or aim for the people I really can rely on? How do I vet out and understand what's really working for me or where I can get those monetary resources? That's the way to deal with this. You may not want to sign the dotted line and make true commitments now because, as I said, Mercury's retrograde, but it certainly can be a time to adjust or explore other avenues that might work better for you. Just as an example, if you're using certain payment programs, this might be a time when you look into something that maybe is going to save you a little more money, or you're more comfortable with who's investing in it. It's who is the big venture capitalist in that particular structure, payment structure. This is a time to kind of dig a little to get more a sense of your own direction and something that aligns better with, as I said, the spiritual direction in day-to-day routines and how you get things done. So the waning moon cycle can be, if the eclipse kind of revealed things or let us know, I'm not really comfortable with this, or maybe there is something to use other than the platform I've been using. This can be a time to dig around and explore that. And you may get a bit overwhelmed by options, as I already said, but it's important to see what's out there so that you can start to get a sense of, well, greater freedom, certainly, but also options that may work better with what it is you're trying to do. So the moon goes void, of course, at 6:22 p.m. on Thursday the 5th. So the moon goes void, of course, at 6:22 p.m. on Thursday the 5th. And then it's void for the rest of the evening into the next day. Friday the 6th may well be a rather challenging day. The moon is void, of course, in the sign of Libra until 11:01 p.m. That's the long void in the sign of Libra. And certain signs, the moon does better when it's traveling through a void. Libra is one where we can feel very at sea, as though we're not really getting the answers we need. Well, what do you think? Well, where do you want to go? And it can be a lot of back and forth with just feeling like you don't have the information, the resolution, the answers that you need. So I think one of the best ways to use this day, also note that Venus enters Aries in the early hours of the day. So Venus in Aries doesn't necessarily have to be impatient, but there is a sense of urgency with how we express love, how we're what we might want to gain financially, what it is we are invested in. This is a little disconnect with that moon in Libra, void of course. So once again, ideally, I would use this day as one for discussions, research, not shake hands or sign any dotted lines, but basically engage in ways that open you up, stimulate, and ideally will kind of clear things out. It almost seems like a post full moon lunar eclipse. Let's just shake this and see what was stirred up and revealed. So there can be an echo, perhaps, or a definition of whatever was introduced earlier. Once that moon enters Scorpio at 11:01 p.m. and it moves through the weekend, this is an intense energy. And I say that because the moon in Scorpio is directed. It wants what it wants. It can be covert. It can be eyes don't miss anything. It can be just at times, depending on, this is to note, depending on how scorpionic a person is, or plutonic or Martian, and how well they have worked and understood those energies, because they are energies that are very much about unearthing, revealing, unrelenting, tenacious, directed. And with the way this moon is traveling through the sign, it is engaged with wanting to reveal, find out, understand things that may well be a bit of a shock when they come out. So I would never discourage, if you're feeling that kind of hunger or desire for the conversations or discovery is coming through you. But what's really important is to do it in a way that is conversational and opening up. And I absolutely do think that can happen. You want to be in alliances that feel trustworthy, that you have the level of privacy that's required for whatever it is you may be delving into. But the old adage, be careful what you ask for, is definitely here over this exploration. And one thing I think about is I look at these couple of days and how they can reveal or peel layers or allow us to discover something, is I think about something that has been mentioned to me time and again about the way the way I do life at times. And I always think it's not so much about bravery or courage. It's more about, I have a deep desire to do something, and I will follow it through without necessarily a sense of, wow, somebody else would be afraid to do this. And that's the energy I see over this weekend. So if you're feeling very stimulated about going for whatever that goal, thing, research, discovery, therapeutic delve into the underworld that you're feeling, you're going to follow it, because it's not so much about thinking too much about, well, what happens if? It's going to be a dive into. And when the if happens, because the if will, then the desire to have revealed that or discovered it or unearthed it, it's really important that you are okay with where that leads you. And one thing that comes to my mind on this is it is about consciousness. And for anyone who's really dug into how they used to do things in an unconscious way, whatever it may be, not really thinking ahead of how a person might take something, a addiction or a way of doing things that wasn't really thought through. Consciousness is when we know what is motivating us and why. And we don't always, but when we do and really understand that, that is what gives us that shock, that revelation, that epiphany that can feel like, wow, life will never be the same. So if that's the kind of eclipse cycle you're in this year, because it will be hitting some of us more personally than others, the most important piece is to strive to be awake and conscious of what you're going for and why. You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.